I understand Jason Crowe Jr.'s commitment is non-binding, but I am not nervous at all, and I'll explain why right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, of course, yes, Jason Crowe Jr., but also I'm very curious to see how much point guard Beau Pribula plays in week one versus quarterback. I think we'll need to see some quarterback reps. I'll explain what I'm talking about here later in the program. Also, some corrections specifically about the north end zone, a video I put out recently that I need to at least clarify without a doubt. And you know what? Before I start the program, also, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And yes, fall camp starting 1 week from today if you're a Mizzou football fan. And, well, if you aren't, why the heck are you listening to this program? So that's a very exciting world to live in. But I have to say, in this world, I'm still going to start with Missouri basketball because getting Jason Crowe Jr. truly is that big of a deal. And, well, a lot of you might be asking yourself, now, wait a second. Are we getting too excited too quickly? Are we putting the cart before the horse? That type of deal. And listener Gregory, while watching last week's program live, said, well, now the magic trick is, can we keep him being Jason Crowe Jr.? And that is a very understandable sentiment. It really is because, of course, hey, a verbal commitment is just that. It is a non-binding agreement. But I'll just say this particular scenario, and that scenario being a high-profile basketball player in particular, that's who we're talking about here, those guys really don't go back on their prominent verbal public commitments very often unless there's a head coaching change. Remember, Michael Porter Jr. only ended up coming to Missouri after committing to the University of Washington because, well, the family friend there, great friend of Michael Porter Sr., Lorenzo Romar, the coach of Washington at the time, was let go. The program went off the rails in Washington, and therefore, well, MPJ decided to open up his recruitment and finds his way back to his hometown of Columbia, Missouri. And once again, for all of the player movement these days in the transfer portal, again, we're talking about high school recruiting here, and we're also talking about guys that are publicly, verbally committed to Missouri. Again, I'm not talking about guys like on the football side, Ryan Wingo, who there was a lot of reporting out there and a lot of rumors at the very least. You can call it reporting, rumors, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line, the conventional wisdom was that, hey, Missouri is probably going to get Ryan Wingo. Just on the basketball side, there was a lot of reporting out there that Missouri was going to get Matthew Cleveland, and the big man, the 7'3" shot blocker, ended up going to Western Kentucky, whose name is escaping me off the top of my head here. The point here is there's been a lot of examples of guys that it seemed like were going to Missouri, but then it didn't end up happening. They commit elsewhere. But again, I think people are conflating those news stories and those happenings with an actual, real, verbal public commitment like Jason Crowe Jr. gave to Missouri. Well, those guys, just simply put, they end up coming to Missouri. I was going to say 9 times out of 10. I think in recent years it's been even higher than that, especially in the transfer portal era. In the 2020s, somebody name me a player who committed to the University of Missouri for basketball and then went back on it. And I think really the fact that Jason Crowe Jr., like Michael Porter Jr., of course, is such a high-profile commitment, I think especially in this era, well, that actually does in some ways bind you more toward the school because, of course, behind the scenes, there are name, image, and likeness deals being worked out, deals with the collective, the new revenue share that's being negotiated, all of that kind of good stuff. To me, all of that stuff does make it even more likely that it's not just about Missouri, by the way, but any type of high profile, especially on the basketball court commitment like this. Well, I think that does make it more binding than it otherwise, I suppose, legally seems like it is, and certainly like it might seem to be to most fans on paper. And I also understand that, especially on the football side, well, heck, Missouri has flipped a lot of prominent players in over the past, say, 10 to 15 years or so. A lot of Oklahoma verbals at wide receiver like Jeremy Maclin, Dorial Green Beckham, even Luther Burden III. But you know what? Basketball's a little bit different because once those dominoes start falling, starting fives and rotations start falling into place. There just simply aren't as many spots. So again, who is the last prominent Missouri recruit who publicly committed here and then ultimately didn't come? I'm struggling to come up with one, especially on the basketball side. I really am. And you know what? I do have some more thoughts on Jason Crowe. I keep getting Aaron Rowe and Jason Crowe mixed up. I'll probably do that a few more times here over the coming years. But no, Jason Crowe Jr., I have some more thoughts on him. First of all, he does remind me quite a bit of Scotty Adkinson, another big-time pickup for Missouri, though Adkinson is for the 2027 high school class. Crowe, one class younger, though he just turned 17 as well, so he's relatively young. He and Adkinson, Crowe and Adkinson, I should say, not really that far off in age. Hopefully, you know, it's sort of a double-edged sword here with these one-and-done type of prospects. I was about to say, hey, I hope that Crowe and Adkinson get to play together for at least one season, but at the same time, if Crowe is so good that he ends up leaving Missouri after 1 year, well, we'll take that. That means he had a heck of a season in his one and only season at Missouri. But of course, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Again, the reason I view him as somewhat similar to Adkinson, well, number one, they're both left-handed players, and it seems like Dennis Gates is putting together a team of left-handers at this point. I'm actually completely okay with that. But no, I really doubt that that's Dennis Gates' thought here. I will say, I do think, like Adkinson, I think both guys are good with their off hands, their right hands as well. I do have a theory that I think left-handers, simply because they have to be, not necessarily inside of basketball, but outside of basketball in real life. When you're left-handed, well, you're just forced to use your offhand more than your right-handed counterparts. But regardless, both Adkinson and Crowe in particular is just an incredible scorer, is just a highly skilled player, a highly advanced player for his age, can score at various different spots on the basketball court, including with really, really deep range beyond the three-point line, too. So, by the way, his Oakland Soldiers, I believe an AAU coach, EYBL, whatever you want to call that non-public high school, private high school affiliated team, well, his head coach says that Crowe is the best scorer in the entire country at this age. Well, I would point out that Tyron Stokes is on that team, and he's the number one player in the entire country. So, quite a compliment there for Jason Crowe, and sort of like Adkinson, once again, not really an above-the-rim type of player, but these are really highly advanced guards with great ball handling skills, great scoring ability at different levels of the floor, and really, I just think Crowe is almost just a souped-up, higher-level version of Scotty Adkinson, though, hey, we're just saying that as they're both about 16, 17-year-old players. So a long way to go to see where these guys and their careers take them. But you got to say, Jason Crowe, quite the follow-up to Scotty Adkinson, and obviously to get a guy who's going to come even earlier, Crowe is, again, to me, as important, if not more important, than any Missouri basketball recruit that has ever come here. And coming up on the show, I do want to correct a stupid assumption I made about the north end zone construction recently. And also, while I'd love to see Missouri steamroll Central Arkansas in week 1, I'd also like to see some spots where Beau Pribula at least has to play quarterback. And I'll explain what I mean here in just a little bit. But first, you ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat, because Monarch Money is much more than just a budgeting app. We're talking a complete financial center. And one of the most surprising things I realized when being able to track all my accounts and investments in one place was, well, just how many redundancies I have. You don't want to be paying for Paramount Plus twice, folks. No, once is plenty. I would argue maybe you don't even need it at all. But I was paying for it twice. Yes, Monarch Money will give you all types of insights. Make sure you don't have any redundancies. And by the way, if you've got LLCs, different credit accounts, all that kind of stuff, take control of it with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. And if you've been enjoying my updates on the north end zone construction, well, I'll continue doing them everywhere on social media, anywhere at Locked On Mizzou. Of course, we're talking X, Instagram, TikTok, all of that good stuff. Well, it is kind of a run and gun operation. I just throw up the videos and just sort of start shooting off at the mouth. And unfortunately, I sort of shot myself in the foot here recently. When on that video, I said, you know what, this east part, the northeast corner, I was saying, you know what, I think maybe they haven't filled in the entire framing yet because, well, it's not symmetrical. Well, what I meant by that is I meant the hill portion. The lower portion is not symmetrical. I didn't ever mean that, hey, the framing, the actual metal framing that you see from Stadium Boulevard, I always knew that was going to be symmetrical. But you know what? Regardless, I was wrong anyway. It seems like much more likely, as a commenter online pointed out, that, hey, they're probably not filling in the northeast corner there of the framing, well, simply because they got to get all of the large equipment and all the physical earth and dirt of the Rock M hill there that is now completely removed at this point. Recent pictures have shown they've basically gotten all of the dirt out of there, and what it has to be an incredible undertaking, no doubt about that. But again, the main point here is that for some reason I had assumed, or just in my brain conflated something, that, hey, actually the two corners of the new hill, for lack of a better term, there's going to actually be stands there. I was thinking those weren't going to be symmetrical. Well, turns out I'm looking at the renderings right now. Look pretty freaking symmetrical to me. So I don't know how I got that wrong or why I assumed it. But hey, I just wanted to correct it here. And in fact, MUTigers.com a couple weeks ago had an update that they posted themselves, and they said forming and pouring underground stair core wells will allow construction to continue to the east. So indeed, it sounds like they will be filling in that east side, yes, and it's going to be symmetrical, folks. So sorry for any confusion there. I definitely, again, didn't think the upper part of it, I always knew that was going to be symmetrical. I just thought, well, the hill part was going to be a little different. Not sure why I thought that, because it sure as heck looks symmetrical to me. And by the way, one of the impressive parts, maybe the under talked about parts of this construction project, is going to be that Rock M End Zone Club, which is going to be underneath the hill. Yes, you're going to be able to watch the game from underneath the hill. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you know what? Pull up the renderings and you'll see for yourself. And as you can see over my shoulder, those of you watching the program, We are just more than 38 days away from the kickoff of the Missouri Central Arkansas game. One thing I've been thinking about in this game, of course, I'm expecting a Missouri beatdown. Anything less than that would be rather disappointing. But what do I want to see from Beau Pribula and this new-look Missouri offense in Week 1? Well, I think the Tigers will run the ball quite effectively, so I'm expecting a lot of big chunks of yardage for Ahmad Hardy, which means a lot of 2nd down and 2 more than likely. But I have to say, it may seem a little counterintuitive, but I hope there's at least a few 3rd and longs in there for Missouri. So instead of playing quarterback instead of playing point guard at quarterback is what is often asked from most college quarterbacks these days, I want to see a spot where Beau Pribula has to actually, on 3rd and 8, step back, read the defense, and make a throw. Because so often, again, I think college quarterbacks are asked essentially to play point guard, where before the snap, if it's 1st and 10 and, well, you're playing off of the slot guy, hey, we're just going to throw a quick screen. It's going to be an immediate alert, and I know where I'm going with the ball 9 times out of 10 before I even throw it on standard downs. But obviously that's not necessarily the case on 3rd and long. So those are the spots that I really want to see, and I hope that Missouri doesn't dominate the game offensively to such an extent that maybe we only see that once or twice. So again, as much as I want to see Missouri push the ball forward and get a 1st down and a touchdown on every single snap, maybe just a little bit, and I do just mean a little bit of tough snaps, of high leverage situations for Pribula. Well, I think that could go a long way into a little bit of preparation for Kansas in Week 2. And I have to say, just having a veteran center, speaking of point guards in college, well, I think it's going to be just so important to have Connor Tollison back as a veteran at center, even if he's 90% healthy. I just think mentally and almost as a second coach on the field, it's going to be so important to have Tollison there, because I could be wrong on this. I'm just going to assume that Connor Tollison is probably going to be setting the protections. Of course, if you watch the NFL every week, you know Patrick Mahomes is the one who is setting the protections at the line of scrimmage for the Chiefs this week. But you know what? As a rookie, that was not the case for him. In fact, Mahomes famously came into training camp for his rookie season in 2017 and didn't even know how to ID the Mike linebacker, which is basically that's how you set your entire protection. Everything kind of goes off of that. Who's the guy in the middle? Okay, then we'll all kind of branch off from there, to put it in an elementary fashion. So the point here is that I think Missouri is wisely going to put as little on his plate as they possibly can throughout the season, but at some point, it's going to pop up at multiple times throughout the season, especially in these competitive SEC games. He can't just be the point guard. He's got to actually step back and play quarterback. So those are the moments that separate the men from the boys at the position. So I'd at least like to get to see a few practice reps before we get to the KU game. And a couple weeks ago, I made the prediction that Ahmad Hardy has a chance to put up Cody Schrader-like numbers this season. And that prompted one listener to ask me, who is the best Missouri running back I've ever covered? Who's the best Missouri running back of all time? Well, I'll answer that question right after these quick words. So listener Dave says, who is the best running back for the Tigers that you have covered? I'm far older than you, so my choice will differ. Well, au contraire there, Dave. I'm not sure what your pick is going to be, but I'd go back plenty far with Missouri history and Missouri running backs. But you know what? I'll just start off with some guys from my childhood, more or less, my teenage years. I'll say Brock Olivo and Devin West immediately came to mind. I think they have to be. Of course, Brock Olivo on the wall at Faurot Field with his number retired. a couple of, I think, obvious guys who need to be mentioned there. I think James Wilder is an obvious one as well. A more recent guy, Tyler Beatty, to me, his one season as the bell cow running back for Missouri, about as good as I've seen in a long, long time from a Missouri running back. Of course, Larry Roundtree was a heck of a player in his own right. But to me, the two guys I really lean toward the most, and I am going to give you two, one from more of the modern era, my era, let's say, and maybe more from the previous era, like my father's era, for example. To me, Henry Josey is, of all the guys I've seen, I think he's in a little bit different of a category for a couple reasons. Number one, I just think he's the most explosive Missouri running back I've seen in my time. I think his yards per carry and his overall stats will back that up. But also just, there's an emotional component to it. There's a toughness component to him as well. I'm saying emotional from my perspective, just seeing him go down with that devastating leg injury at the end of that 2011 season was just horrible to watch. And, hearing about the brutal nature of that injury, how much he had to work and come back from it, and to then cap that off with a 2013 season that nobody really saw coming. I think a lot of people were optimistic for that season, but to have the type of season that Missouri had, and in large part because Josey came back and was just about every bit as good as he had been before, but I think was on, obviously a much better team than the 2011 Tigers. And wow, just a magical season, one that we're still trying to get back to a dozen years later, quite honestly. So that's my modern one. And for going back a little ways, to me, Joe Moore was just a man among boys. Now, I got to say, obviously I didn't see Joe Moore play nearly as much. I'm not nearly as familiar with his game as I am Henry Josey's. But just going back and watching the 1970 Orange Bowl alone, and it's just so utterly obvious what a dominant college player that Moore was. And again, just a man among boys. You just don't see college running backs built like him very much anymore. He was built like Jim Brown. He was built like, to take a more modern example, Derrick Henry. I mean, maybe he's not quite as big as Derrick Henry, but just in terms of, he's 6'3", 220 pounds of just pure granite that you absolutely do not want to tackle, was Joe Moore. So to me, those are the two guys who probably stand out to me more than anybody. I know this is a really subjective topic here that covers a ton of different eras, so I would definitely love to hear all of your opinions. Certainly Tony Temple is worthy of a mention. He had just the wildest Cotton Bowl performance of all time and was a huge part of, again, a magical 2007 season for the Tigers as well. So, I don't know, let me know what you think about the Missouri running backs. And one more slight correction, I suppose, by the way, I could call it. Well, listener Clayton, longtime friend and listener of the show, by the way, met Clayton on Chestnut Hill, the BC game all these years ago. So that was good, and he still listens, so I must be doing something right. But Clayton pointed out I was making fun of the lighting trend in basketball arenas this day, the lighting on railing. It just seems like, hey, we just have to be overstimulated at all times. Well, Clayton did correctly point out probably that, hey, this is probably a safety thing as well. So, hey, maybe there's a backup power there with if the main power goes out, maybe we can light up the rails and help people maybe escape the arena in a safe fashion, that type of deal. Well, I got to say, as much as I enjoy having intelligent listeners on the show, this is the downside. Occasionally, they expose your ignorance, just like my ignorance was exposed on the North End Zone deal just a little while ago. So thank you, Clayton. Really appreciate it, buddy. But no, seriously, thanks all of you for joining me here on today's episode. And by the way, one more note to go out on here. Mabor Majak back in Missouri, by the way, as a grad assistant with Dennis Gates and company. So, hey, we're not afraid of adding a prominent member of that 0-19 season back to the staff. Hey, Tamar Bates and Caleb Grill came back and killed it for Missouri last season. So let's certainly not be superstitious. Mabor Majak, who by all accounts, just an awesome guy. So I'm excited to have him back in the program. Excited to have a real big guy back in the program after Rob Summers departed to be the head coach of Cleveland State as well. So you know what? Thanks for joining me on the program. Thanks for making this show your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal with Brian Smith. Brian, as always, has all of the recruiting entries, portal entries, signings, all that good stuff. Find The Portal on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller. This has been Locked On Mizzou.